So by default, to save on processing power, Lumen excludes a lot of small objects from its calculations. So you need to tell Unreal that you want them within the Lumen calculation by increasing it from 1 to 4 or even higher if you do have smaller objects. And one last edit I'm going to make to the post-process volume is setting it for a manual exposure. So under exposure, metering mode, set to manual. Bring up the exposure compensation to 13.25. It's pretty good. And also, this is an artistic choice. If we increase it, we can see that we get more bloom in our world. So maybe a value of 2. So this is without bloom and with bloom. I do think it makes the scene look a little bit nicer. And that is the basics of lighting and environments in Unreal Engine 5, specifically for architectural visualization. And since we're using Lumen, that gives us the ability with Control and L as a shortcut to rotate our sun, watch our world be updated in real time based off of our sun's lighting, which is pretty insane. Now, while Lumen is amazing, we do get some trade-offs in quality. Just because we are able to use real-time global illumination doesn't mean that it's the best case for certain scenarios, specifically a scenario like this, where there isn't going to be any moving parts since it's just an architectural visualization scene. We might as well bake our lighting because number one, baked lighting is always more performance friendly than using Lumen because Lumen does do a lot of GPU calculations behind the scenes, while baked lighting is just overlaying a texture. And number two, if you properly bake your lights into a good light map, then the quality will be better than Lumen. So let's convert our Lumen environment into a baked lighting environment. So I want to make a copy of our current level, which is ArcViz Room, by selecting it in our content drawer and pressing Ctrl and D to duplicate it. So let's call this one ArcViz Room Baked, and double click to go inside of it. Make sure we save selected. All right, great. So first thing I'm going to do is select all my lights and set my directional light to static and set my skylight also to static. Now I'm going to go into my post-process volume and disable Lumen for reflections and global illumination. So set this to none, and under reflections, also set this to none. So we can see immediately we aren't getting any global illumination. That's because I should come up to build and build all levels to start ray tracing in the background. All right, great. So here we have our baked lighting. This is really bad since we need to increase the quality of our light bakes by going into the world settings. And if I scroll up, we can see that under light mask, we have light mask settings. And in the dropdown, we have a bunch of settings that will change the quality of our light baking. So first thing, I want to increase the number of bounces, which will just illuminate our scene a little bit more. So the number of indirect lighting bounces is right now set to 3. Let's set that to 10. And also for skylighting bounces, set this from 1 to 10. Number 2, for static light. Level scale, if we bring this below 1, for example 0.5, then we're going to get a lot more quality out of our bakes. So I'm going to set this instead of 0.5, let's set this to 0.1. And to compensate for the static lighting level scale, you want to increase the indirect lighting quality to 10. So specifically, I want to increase the indirect lighting quality to 10 because the static lighting level scale right now is set to 0.1. And generally, you want your static lighting level scale times your indirect lighting quality to equal 1. So for example, if instead of static lighting level scale being 0.1, I change it to 0.5, then the indirect lighting quality should be set to 2, since 0.5 times 2 equals 1. But I'm going to leave it at 0.1 since that does give us a better value at the cost of waiting a little bit more for the ray trace calculations to happen. And now that I like my settings, come to build and click on build all levels. So this build will take longer than beforehand because we increase the quality of our light bakes. So now this is our scene, and we didn't really notice that much of a difference since I also want to come up to build and under lighting quality, make sure that it's not set to preview. Instead, it's set to either medium, higher production. I'm just going to set to medium. And also while I'm at it, I'm going to select my post-process volume. And let's bring down the bloom, since I think the bloom is too intense, to 1. And for exposure compensation, I'm going to leave it at, let's go 12.7. And now if I press build all levels, keep in mind that if you are following along exactly with this tutorial, you do not have to press build whenever I press build, since I'm building my lights a lot more frequently than I would to just demonstrate what some of these settings do. So if you want to save time and not have to wait for each build, then I would wait for the very end and copy those settings. We can see that the quality is still not the best. Because if you remember, light maps are being baked into a texture. And if that texture has low resolution, then we're going to get low resolution shadows and lighting. So we need to raise the resolution on each of our static meshes. And to see the resolution of our static mesh visually, you can come up to Lit, down to Optimization View Modes, and select Light Map Density with the shortcut Alt and 0. So right now, our entire room is pretty much blue. This is not what we want. We want our scene to be in the greenish to reddish range. So to increase the light map resolution of a static mesh, you want to select the object, and within the details panel, scroll down until you see lighting and overridden light map resolution. It's at 64. Turn that on and increase that to, let's try 128 or 256. And okay, that looks a little bit better, but since this is the floor and it will have some of the shadow, I want to increase that to 512. So make the floor by 100. Select the Alt on resolution. Then we're going to get low resolution shadows and lighting. So we need to raise the resolution on each of our static meshes. And to see the resolution of our static mesh visually, you can come up to Lit, down to Optimization View Modes, and select Light Map Density with the shortcut Alt and 0. So right now, our entire room is pretty much blue. This is not what we want. We want our scene to be in the greenish to reddish range. So to increase the light map resolution of a static mesh, you want to select the object, and within the details panel, scroll down until you see lighting and overridden light map resolution. It's at 64. Turn that on and increase that to, let's try 128 or 256. And okay, that looks a little bit better, but since this is the floor and it will have some of the shadow, I want to increase that to 512. So make the floor pretty dense. I think the walls around it should also be, let's go 512. And the roof can also be 512. So for the baseboard, I'm going to select that and make this, let's try 256. The door needs to increase it from 64 to 128. The chair is a pretty big deal since it's our focal element. So let's go 256 right there. And for the wall is at 256. I'm going to try 512. The table is at 128. Actually, let's make this 512. The wall right here, 512, and the floor. Actually, I'm going to increase this to 124. So I think this looks good. Now, if we bake our lights, let's see what this gives us. So at this point, it is going to take a little while for our lights to bake, since there's a lot more detail it needs to calculate. And probably by now you understand why Lumen is a pretty big deal, since it gets rid of this repetitive process of having to wait for our lighting to bake. And then if we don't like the bake, we have to change something and change some settings and then bake our lighting again. And then if we don't like that, we have to go back, and it's an entire process, while Lumen just works immediately. But in this case, it is worth it since the quality is going to be better than Lumen. Okay, now that we're done baking, let's see what our world looks like. And okay, that's a lot better. But the shadows, especially in between objects, are a little bit too intense, since by default, Unreal is calculating ambient occlusion. I want to disable ambient occlusion, since I'm just relying on our baked light map to simulate all of our shadows and lighting. So within our post-process volume, let's go find where ambient occlusion is, which is right here under rendering features, under ambient occlusion, intensity. Let's turn that to 0 to turn it all off. And increase our exposure compensation to 13. Okay, now our scene is baked, but we are missing one last thing, and that is we don't have any reflections whatsoever. our world looks pretty bad since we don't have those reflections. And the reason why is because Lumen calculates reflections automatically. When we bake our lighting, we have to specify where we want our reflections to be. And we do that through a sphere reflection capture. So to add a sphere reflection capture, come up to the add button, down to visual effects, and drag in a sphere reflection capture. Essentially what the sphere reflection capture does is that it takes a 360-degree snapshot from the sphere of our world, and then it uses that as the projection of our reflections. And to get a better snapshot of our world, come up to build and select build reflection captures. So right now we have one reflection capture, but we can have multiple reflection captures, since obviously it doesn't make sense for all reflections to grab from the same location. So if I duplicate this with Alt, and then if I decrease the influence radius within the details panel to, let's go 500, and place it on top of my small objects right here. And once again, come up to build and build reflection captures. We can see that these objects, instead of grabbing from this sphere reflection capture, they're grabbing from the smaller one, which is overriding the larger one. Since the reflection capture on the table is smaller, Unreal knows to pick this sphere reflection capture for all the objects within its radius of 500 centimeters. So this is essentially how you bake lighting in Unreal Engine. Now I know that the setup took a lot longer than using Lumen. Also, we had to wait a while for each light baking to happen and for all the light maps to be created and the ray tracing to happen. But in the end, in my opinion, the quality, especially right here, if I select a chair and hide it, we can see how detailed those soft shadows are. And if I unhide it, take a good look at this baked lighting scene, jump back into our ArcViz room, which is using Lumen. Obviously, the baked lighting looks a lot better. So hopefully you understand the difference between baked lighting and Lumen. Obviously, the baked lighting looks a lot better. So hopefully you understand the difference between baked lighting and Lumen, their pros and cons, and why you would use baked lighting over Lumen, even though Lumen is real time. That is the very basics of lighting in Unreal Engine. Of course, you could get even more complicated because the lighting is an entire art form by itself. But hopefully you do have a good foundation to learn more. Now we're going to go over landscapes. So landscapes in Unreal are pretty important because odds are you will always be seeing a landscape or your character is on top of a landscape. So in this section, we're going to go over how we can create a landscape, sculpt it, and finally at the end, go over how to add foliage. To demonstrate how to make landscapes, let's create an entirely new map. So press Control Space and let's go into My Stuff. And right here, let's create a brand new folder called Maps, which will hold all of our maps. So I'm going to select both my map and my build data and drag it into Maps, let go, and move here. So let's jump into there and right click, create a brand new level. So by right clicking and creating a level, instead of coming up to File and New, we don't get access to the templates, which is fine. I do want to create a brand new level completely from scratch. So let's call this one Landscape Example and jump in. So let's save everything. The reason why we're starting from a blank level is because I want to show how to light an outdoor environment from scratch. Okay, to begin, let's create a landscape. To create a landscape, you need to go into landscape editing mode. To do so, come up to select mode and then select landscape. Finally, we're going to go over what some of these modes do. So you can press landscape, or the shortcut is Shift and 2. So throughout this tutorial, so far we've been in select with the shortcut Shift and 1. Now we're going to go into Shift and 2 to edit our landscape. We don't have a landscape, so Unreal is going to ask us if we want to create a landscape. We see that we get a bunch of different settings that we could pick from. Generally, I don't play with these settings, I just leave it as default. But if you are going to play with those settings, I recommend you use the templates provided to you from the Unreal documentation. Type in Unreal Docs, and then type in Landscape Technical Guide. So if you are going to change any of these settings, I recommend you use the presets. For now, I'm going to use the default settings and press Create. Okay, great. Now we have a landscape, but before we start editing our landscape, it's best to light our scene so we know exactly what is happening. First off, let's add in a directional light. So add light directional light. Simply drag that in. We can leave all the settings at default, except I'm going to set to movable since I want to use completely dynamic lighting. To help us know the direction of the light and how the shadows will look like, I'm going to add in a cube temporarily to help us when we're lighting our scene. Just like that. Now, obviously, we don't want an endless black void, we want a sky. So come up to Create, Visual Effects, and select the sky and atmosphere to drag it in. And automatically it's working. If I hold down Control and L as a shortcut to rotate my sun, notice that the sky updates in real time. So as I lower my sun, the sky changes colors to represent a morning time or a dusk time. And I can raise it up to get a more bluish sky, which is pretty amazing that Unreal automatically updates your sky depending on your sun's angle. Now there are two issues. We still have a black void in the lower half of our world, and zooming in on the shadow, it's pretty dark. We're getting a little bit of global illumination and bounce lighting from our sun, but we need lighting from our sky as a whole. So to fix that, come up to Add, Lights, and drag in a skylight. Now it's recommended for skylights that under real-time capture, make sure it's turned on if you are going to use a skylight with the sky and atmosphere. And also, while we're at it, set it to movable since we're only using lumen lighting. Also, let's go fix our black void by adding in some fog to cover that. So come into Visual Effects and Exponential Height Fog, simply drag it out like this. And we can control where the exponential height fog starts by moving the widget. So if I move it up, we get more fog, and if I move it down, we get less fog. So hopefully you can see what's happening. For now, I'm going to leave it in the middle right here. And with that, a directional light, sky and atmosphere, skylight, and fog is pretty much how you light 90% of open world scenes in Unreal Engine 5. It is literally that easy. And what's amazing is that all these objects interact with each other successfully. So I can move my sun around, lower it, create a really dark area, lower it to the point where it's night, and then raise it. Slowly the sun comes above the fog and starts to illuminate our world. So it's completely real-time, time of day lighting. Now that we set up the lighting, we're able to see any edits we make to our landscape. So let's finally go over the landscape editing mode. And to do so, I need to come up to my mode selector and select landscape from select, or I can press Shift and 2 as the shortcut. So by default, it's going to give us this brush right here. And as you could probably guess, hold down the left mouse button, I'm able to sculpt and raise the terrain. So left mouse button is to raise the terrain. If I hold down Shift and left mouse button, then I lower the terrain. And by default, we are using the basic sculpt brush. I can even increase the tool strength. So right now it's at 0.3. Of course, if I bring it up to 1, then our sculpts will be a lot more intense. Even holding down Shift, I can really lower the landscape's terrain. If I want to, I can control the fall off of this brush. With even holding down Shift, I can even holding down Shift. Of course, if I bring it up to 1, then our sculpts will be a lot more intense. Even holding down Shift, I can really lower the landscape's terrain. If I want to, I can control the fall off of this brush with the brush fall off. So bring it to 0 will mean there is no fall off. So I get some insanely harsh sculpts happening. Or I can bring it all the way up to 1, which makes the fall off non-existent, giving us the smoothest brush as possible for really faint changes to our landscape. Now, a shortcut to increasing the brush size is to use the right bracket key on my keyboard. So right bracket key will increase my brush size and left bracket key will decrease it. Very similar to Photoshop shortcuts. So that's the basics of the sculpt brush. As a reminder, if you ever want to get back the default values of any property in Unreal Engine, go to that property and select the arrow right next to it to reset it back to its default value. Now let's go over the smoothing brush. And as you can guess, if you have some really harsh landscapes and you want it to be smoother, like right here, it was really harsh since our fall off was non-existent. Using the smooth brush, I can smooth away those bumps in the landscape. So pretty great. And the next brush after that is the flatten brush. So flatten brush is great for terracing, or maybe you're creating a game, for example, and let's say right here you need a flat area for your gameplay. Well, to get a flat area, of course, we need to use the flatten brush, which will just flatten our landscape. It's also great for creating terraces. So if I start my flatten brush off right here, notice how we have a higher terrace and a lower one, and right below that, another one. So we're very quickly able to create some complicated landscapes with just these 3 brushes. And these 3 brushes are the main brushes. Generally, I don't really touch any of the other brushes, except for very specific circumstances, which we aren't going to be going over in this video. Now, that's how you sculpt a landscape. But how do I paint a landscape? Since right now we're using Unreal's default material. Of course, landscapes in real life are not made out of squares. Instead, they're made up of grass, dirt, sand, rocks, and pretty much anything you would expect outside. Now, I'm going to briefly go over how to create a very basic landscape material. Create the material under My Stuff, and call this one m_landscape. Double click to open it up. And I'm going to dock it up here so I can switch in between my level and landscape. Now, the difference between a normal material and a landscape material is 1 node, and that is landscape layer blend. So select it, and here we have the layer blend. Notice how we don't have any inputs. That's because we need to specify inputs in the details panel right here. So the inputs are essentially going to be layers. So you can have a grass layer, a dirt layer, a sand layer, and then within your landscape editing mode, we'll be able to paint on those individual layers on our landscape. So to add in a layer, select your layer blend, and under layers, click on the add button, and make sure you click on the triangles to see the drop down. Now for the first layer, call this one grass, and the second layer, call this one dirt. Now this is just for demonstration, so it's not going to look very good. But to get the point across, let's go find a grass texture and a dirt texture under starter content, textures, and I'm going to use T_ground. Also for dirt, looks like we don't have a dirt, so I'm just going to use the metal rust texture because that does look like dirt and it will get the point across. So drag in metal rust as our dirt. Now hook up grass right there and dirt, and I'll put these into base color, and let's press apply. Save everything, jump back into landscape examples, and now to apply the landscape material to our landscape, we can't just drag our material onto the landscape like that. Instead, in the details panel, scroll down and get landscape material and drag on the landscape material to the slot right there and let go. But we get a really weird black texture since we need to specify where these layers are. Right now, Unreal isn't picking any layers, so it's just defaulting to black. Hop back into your landscape mode by pressing Shift and 2, and within Paint, we have our layers. So we need to create our layers and store them somewhere within our content drawer. So to create a layer, click on the add button, and you want to select weight blended layer normal. So select that. It's going to ask us to create a new landscape layer info. And it's going to automatically create a new folder for us where our map is located called our map name and shared assets. Now we could also create a new folder by right-clicking, new folder, or we can pretty much say anywhere else in our project. I'm just going to leave it as default value, and also leave it default name it's generating grass_layer info. Click save. Now we have our layer right there, and we can see our grass is applied to our landscape. Let's do the same thing for dirt by clicking on the plus button and going weight blended layer normal. Select that. And for dirt underscore layer, also click on save at the same location. So now we have two layers in a folder that's right next to our maps. And go to save all. Now, obviously, this landscape is too shiny. So jump back into our landscape, hold down one and left to bring a constant scale parameter, and give a value of 1. So we have complete roughness to get rid of that shine, apply, and our landscape is looking better. But I also think we should add in normal maps to give the texture a little bit of bump to it. So come back into our landscape material. And let's control space under texture, starter content, textures. Let's find where the grass is, which is right here. Drag out normal map, and let's find where the normal map is for rust, and that is right there. And drag that out. So I want to blend between our normal maps, just like how we're blending the base colors. And I could do that by copying and pasting my layer blend, which I can do with Control and D to duplicate, and plug up the normal map right there, and plug up the rust normal map right there, and put those both in a normal. So now we have
now
two
we
layer
have two layer
blends, which are sampling from the same exact
layers
layers that we just created in our landscape editing mode. And press apply. Now let's jump into dirt. And lower the brush size just a little bit. See the tool strength is at 0.3. Holding the left mouse button. I'm now able to blend in dirt and grass. One thing I like to do whenever I create my landscape is to get a human reference. That's why I'm able to compare the size of my landscape next to a human. And this is especially helpful since one thing I want to do with M_landscape is add in texture tiling, but it's hard to know how much I should tile this texture when there isn't a human reference. So to get a human reference, you want to come up to add feature or content pack. And select the third person. You can see that there's a mannequin right here, which we're going to be using as our reference. And select add to project. So this will add a bunch of new assets to our project. And specifically, I want to use the assets and character, mannequins, meshes, and we can do SKM _Manny. So drag that out to get a human size reference to compare our landscape textures to. And we can place them right there. So this human, if I zoom in on the grass, you can see that probably the grass is a little bit too small. So let's fix that. Jump back into our landscape material. And the way we change the tiling of any textures is the exact same way we did with M_master material. So we grabbed the texture coordinates and we multiplied it by a parameter value so we were edited in the instance of this material. Now I could recreate this from scratch for M_landscape, or I can highlight all of that, press Control and C, go back into M_landscape and Control and V it. Now I can plug this up to grass. And also want to plug this up to the normal map of grass, which is right here. So if you remember, both this texture and this texture handle grass, since they're both being fed into the grass layers of the layer blend node. So press apply, and we won't notice any changes since we have to create a material instance of our landscape and apply to the landscape. So right click, go create a material instance. And drag this material instance onto our landscapes with the landscape selected. So just do that. Then double click on our instance. Let's undock it and bring it into the maps right there. Click on size. And I want to increase the size of my texture by decreasing the tiling. So instead of 1, let's try 0.5. Okay, that looks better. Maybe even 0.3. Okay, I really like 0.3. So this was beforehand 1, and now this is the tiling at 0.3, which makes the landscape look better. Now I also want to add tiling features for our dirt. So I can highlight this, Control C, Control V, and paste it right there. Plug this up to dirt, and plug this up to normal map. But if I apply and go back into our material instance, we have a pretty big issue right here. And that is now our size controls both. And let's come over to the dirt. Controls both our grass and dirt. And we want to control those independently. And the issue is in Unreal for material parameters. If you have two parameters with the same exact name, then they're going to be treated the same within the material instance. So the way you fix this is that you have to give each of these parameters a different name. So call this one size grass, and then call this one down here size dirt, and press apply. And now that should be different. So we also get dirt parameter within our instance. So let's jump back into landscape example. And press Shift and 2 to go into landscape mode. Select dirt because I want to paint a little bit of dirt right next to the mannequin, so we can see what grass and dirt look like in relationship to our human scale reference. Now with dirt right there, let's go increase it to 0.3, maybe even 0. Actually. I think 1.2 looks good. So just a little bit more tiling with our dirt. If you're curious how to make a really good landscape material, I do have a landscape tutorial series on my YouTube channel. While it is for Unreal Engine 4, pretty much all of it still applies to Unreal Engine 5. That was the very basics of landscapes. Now we're going to go over how we can get assets from the Megascans library. So in case you don't know, Unreal already comes with thousands of free high-quality assets ready to be used immediately in Unreal Engine. We can get these assets through the Quixel Bridge plugin, which is already installed in Unreal. Before we jump into Megascans, let's make some edits to our world. So first off, I'm going to get rid of my landscape materials since I think it's a little bit distracting and I just want to focus on the Megascans assets. So select my landscape, roll down to the landscape material slot, and let's reset it back to the world grid by selecting that arrow right there. There we go. And I also want to lock my exposure with the post process volume. So come into volumes, post process, drag it out, and scroll up to exposure. Let's set it to manual and exposure compensation. Notice that there is no change right now because I need to make sure that infinite extend unbound is turned on. Now I can increase the exposure compensation. I found a value of 12 to be pretty good. And I'm also going to raise the position of my sun so we get more light in the world. Okay, so now that the sun was raised, notice that the brightness of the sun also increased. So exposure compensation, I'm going to lower it to 11. We're 11.5. All right, great. So let's go over how we can get access to the Quixel Bridge library. And getting access is pretty simple. You just want to come up to the add button and then select Quixel Bridge. Now, if this is your first time logging into Quixel Bridge, it might ask you to log into your Epic Games account. Don't worry, it's the same exact account that you created when downloading Unreal Engine. So just go into that, and then you get access to right now at the time recording 16,688 assets, which is absolutely amazing. Now, for some reason you don't have Quixel Bridge installed in Unreal Engine, then you want to go to the Epic Games Launcher and come to Unreal Engine library, scroll all the way down to Vault, and find the Quixel Bridge plugin. Once you found the Quixel Bridge plugin, click on Install to Engine and select Unreal 5. Although by default this plugin should be installed, so you shouldn't have this issue. But it's important to bring up in case you don't see Quixel Bridge. Now let's open up Quixel Bridge and let's go over a simple example of bringing in a 3D object. So to bring in a 3D object is pretty simple. Number one, you want to find a 3D object that you like. So maybe this rock right here. Then all I have to do is select this rock and let me make my screen window just a little bit smaller. Hold down the left mouse button and drag it into your world, just like if it's an asset from the concept browser. And now we have a rock in our world. Importing realistic assets into Unreal Engine have never been this easy. And if I press Control Space, we can see in our content folder that two new folders were created, specifically Megascans and MS Presets. So Megascans contains all our Megascan assets that we get from Bridge. For example, we have a folder called 3D Assets, and inside 3D Assets, we have another folder called Moss Forest Rock. And right here are all the assets that make up specifically this rock right here. Now the other folder, if we go back to content, right next to Megascans is MS Presets. So MS Presets contains all the master materials that Quixel Bridge uses. So if we go out into content, back to Megascans, 3D assets, Mossy Forest Rock, we'll see that the material that's using is a material instance. So it's not a material by itself. If I scroll down to the material instance, we can see what its master material is, and it's using M_MS default fuzz material. And if I click on the magnifying glass, it's going to jump to its location, which is of course under MS Presets, which contains all those master materials. And you also notice that we do get a bunch of parameters. So we're going to go over the main material parameters that Quixel Bridge provides to us, which we will use consistently. So to begin, let's go over albedo controls. And I'm going to my window off to the side so we better see our assets. So albedo tint does exactly what the color tint does. So to begin, let's go over albedo controls. And I'm going to begin. We're going to go over the main material parameters that Quixel Bridge provides to us, which we will use consistently. So to begin, let's go over albedo controls. And I'm going to my window off to the side so we can better see our assets. So albedo tint does exactly what the color tint does that we just created for our own master material. So I can completely change the color of my asset. I'm going to press cancel since I don't want to make any changes to my color right now. And below that is albedo controls. Now we don't see any albedo controls right now since I need to click on the triangle icon to get a drop down. So right here we have saturation, brightness, and contrast, and they all do exactly as you would expect. Saturation increases the saturation of our asset. Bring it back to value of 1. Brightness controls how bright the asset is. And this is probably the parameter I use the most with Megascan assets, especially if I'm trying to get a lot of different assets to blend together well. I'm going to try to control the brightness to make sure they all have a similar value to each other. And below that is contrast. And all of these have a default value of 1. Now below that is metallic. Generally I don't have to play with it because this asset isn't metallic. But if you do want to override one of the metallic behaviors, for example, increase the base metallic from 0, which is what it should be, since this asset is metallic to 1, and then bring metallic override to 0. Now we can see that the asset is metallic, although I wouldn't recommend you do it, but it is good to know that those options are there. So I'm going to reset them to their default value. And then below that is roughness. So roughness controls how shiny the asset is. Exactly what we learned about during the PBR section of the material chapter. So max roughness is 1. If I bring this to 0, then the rocks have no roughness and are really shiny. I'm going to bring back the roughness by setting it back to 1. Below that is normal strength, which is like the flat and normal. Although now if we increase normal strength, the normal increases, and then if we decrease this to 0, then the normal map has no effect on our assets. So obviously we do want to leave this at 1, so the normal map has a little bit of an effect. So there's still a bunch of other parameters that we could play with, but these are all the main ones that are needed for props just like this. Now let's go over how we import a surface material, which is different from a prop, since surfaces are good for a floor like this cube. And not necessarily meant for specific props. So let's go into Quixel Bridge. And let's find a nice surface. For example, brick, decorative brick wall, and we could click download. Although I do want to go over the different quality options. So right now, highest quality, low, medium, high, and highest. Low quality is 1K texture. Medium quality is 2K. High quality is 4K, and highest quality is 8K. So I think generally, unless you're really trying to go for the best render as possible, I wouldn't go with 8K textures. The highest I would go with is 4K. And click download. So you're gonna have to wait for this to download. And once it is done downloading, simply click the add button. Immediately you'll see that our content browser opens up, and we get our material right there. The material functions like any other material. You can drag it, let go to place it on an object. So now we have our brick in our world. I can select this brick and open up its material instance to see what parameters we have. And the parameters are pretty much exactly the same as beforehand, except I want to point out what global does. So global controls our tiling. If I click on tiling offset, and then click on the drop down, we see tiling X and Y. If I want to tile it more on the X direction, I can increase this. For one tile on the Y direction, I can increase this. Or I can decrease the tiling in X and Y to make our texture larger. I can even offset it. So move this texture in the X or Y axis of our object's texture UVs. And if you really want to, we even have the ability to rotate this. Although I'm just going to leave it at 0. If you ever want to reset all the values at once, then click on the top arrow. And here is a neat trick that I do want to point out. Let's say you want to go to the folder that this asset is located in, but you don't want to have to navigate to that manually, go through all your folders and try to find where this asset is located. Well, what you could do is in the details panel, click on the magnifying glass right next to that object, which will jump to that location. Or the shortcut is to press Control and B at the same time to jump to that object location. So if you select any object, for example, the human reference, press Control B, it's going to jump to that location. So that is a shortcut that we will be using a lot, especially when we're creating our medieval village. Now I think it's a good time to go over the foliage mode. And to go into foliage mode, simply switch from select mode, below landscape foliage. So foliage mode is great because it allows us to paint foliage around our world very quickly. And populate our world with grass, trees, rocks, and pretty much all the small assets you would expect to be in an environment. Now I'm going to shift one to get out of foliage mode because we first need foliage. And where are we going to get foliage? Hopefully you can guess Quixel Bridge. So in Quixel Bridge, come to 3D plants, and we have a bunch of plants to select from. I specifically want to find fern, just as an example, although you could pick any of the plants that are available to us. And I'm going to select almond fern. Now, just like when we were downloading the materials, we have different quality options. So I could use low quality, which is 1K, medium quality, 2K, or high quality, which is 4K. And I'm going to stick to high quality right now. Let's download it. And once it's done downloading, add to your project with the add button. And now this fern plant is successfully inside of our project. I can drag this out. See exactly what assets were made available to us. Unlike other Megascan assets, foliage can have multiple objects. So here we have three different ferns, and let's open up the material instance to see what options are available to us. We have a couple ways to open up our material instance. Number one, I could go into the details panel with any of these selected and select the first material available to us. Or I can press Control and B to jump to the object location, which is our fern folder. And select the material right here. I want to make sure that I select the material that doesn't have billboard inside of it. So select the non-billboard one, and this will be our main material instance. So I'm going to go over all the parameters of foliage. So first off, we have overlays, which is essentially functions just like our color tints. So if I want to make my foliage a little bit blue or red, this is where I make that change. And when I do make it red, it kind of gives it a fall feel, which is pretty neat. Press cancel since I don't want to make those changes. And right above that is color variation. Because you wouldn't expect each fern to be the same exact color. There would be a little bit of variation between all the different ferns, and that's exactly what color variation does. If I bring this up to something large like 0.5, notice how each fern has its own individual tint. Now normally you don't want it to be this intense. You'd want it to be just a little bit like 0.1 or even 0.05. So that there's just a little bit of variation between all the objects. And below that is roughness intensity. So roughness intensity is just like our mass materials roughness strength. So bring it down to zero means our object is very shiny. And bring it up to let's go 5. We'll make our ferns pretty rough. Let's leave it as default value of 1. And below that is normal intensity, which functions like normal strength. Bring it to 0, get rid of the normal maps. So this is with the normal maps and without. Or bring it to 5 gives ourselves really intense normal maps. But I'm going to leave it at 1 for now, which is default. And after that, we have lucency, strength, and desaturation. So light doesn't just stop when it hits a leaf. Instead, light goes into the leaf, it bounces around a little bit, and then it leaves the leaf. So that is where translucency comes in. Translucency is how much light should bounce around inside the leaf. It's at a value of 7. If I bring this to 0, then we have no light bouncing within the leaf. If I bring it up to 1, a little bit, 2, a little bit more, 5, and finally default of 7. And below that is translucency desaturation. Notice how if I bring it to 0, it becomes completely desaturated. Now the light inside the leaf is white. Or if I bring it to 1, then there was no desaturation when the light was bouncing in the leaf. So I'm going to leave it at the value of 0.955. And finally we have probably the most important parameter, and that is enable grass wind. So turn this on and then set it to true. So now our plants have wind, which adds another level of realism. We can control the wind intensity by, of course, playing with it right here. So if it's 0, there is no wind, and its default is 0.15. Maybe if we're inside a hurricane, make this 0.5. Now it's super intense. So I think 0.15 is a little bit too intense by default. So I'm going to bring this down to 0.05 for just some really faint movement. Now you probably noticed throughout this entire time is that the foliage pops a little bit as I go further away or closer up to it. And this popping is a level of detail. So we can better see level of detail by opening up the foliage and its static mesh editor. And right here we have LOD. LOD0 is what the foliage will look like when you're really up close to it. And actually, let me go uncheck the grid so we can better see this. LOD1 is what it will look like when we get a little bit further away. When the camera gets further, we go LOD2, further LOD3, and finally we go to LOD4. And as we increase LODs, as the camera gets further away, we lose more and more geometry. Until we get this weird thing right here, which is essentially just a picture of the fern, which is pointing at the camera. So this material right here is what the billboard is. So that's why we weren't editing this material. This material is completely different from our main material instance. If we did edit this, then we wouldn't see any changes right now in our world, since we're zoomed up really close to our ferns. We would notice a change if we're far away. And hopefully you can see it in YouTube. All of our ferns transition to a billboard, which is the furthest LOD possible. So that's important to point out that if you make a major change to these ferns, for example, let's give them a color tint of blue. We have blue ferns, but if we go away, our billboards are green. So we also have to go into the billboard material instance, which is the second material, and change this color to blue to match the main material instance. So we get a better transition. Now that looks terrible. So I'm going to change it back to default value of gray, and right here change it also back to gray. And I can exit out all of these and save everything because now that we've gone over the parameters for foliage, we can talk about the foliage mode editor.
Before we get this tutorial experience, and this is like the values is lining up perfectly. And now what you can do is you can say like, well, cool story, but I want to artistically tweak this, and let's just say we go with like 15,000. So now we're on 12.9, which is still like, now it's like proper like 3 stops more or less. And if I go back to 25,000, it's 3.5 stops. This is completely up to you. However, this is what, like, this contrast that we can see here. Actually, let's choose the median between these two and go with 20,000. So this is what, like, photographer found to be the perfect ratio of shadow and light for a setting like this. And that is one way to do it, right? So if we would now, and this is the beauty of this, why I love this approach so much. Like if I say, okay, let's do something completely different. Okay, let's let me just open the sky here on the side. Let's say we're gonna do this thing. So here's a problem. If we look at the sky, the sun is actually not really there anymore. But we'll just assume for the sake of argument, the sun would be right here at the horizon. Okay. So the first thing is like, okay, this was just about the relationship, not the actual values. So what do we have to do? We're gonna go in here into our page here, and something has just messed with the colors. Okay. So if we go down here, this is like no. Typical photographic scene at sunset. Let's say 25 candela per square meter. That is actually really low. Because that's not like 2,500, whatever, that's like 25. All right. So let's just play this through, and I'll show you how easy it is to actually make sense of this. So the first thing that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna check this shader, and these are oh no, that's sorry. This one, we're gonna turn this into like a parameter, sky, texture. Gonna save this, and here we just gonna create material instance, call it sky. Sunset. And now obviously the good thing if we just like open this, just override texture here. No need to mess with anything that we built before. What is this saying? Okay, great. So this is a perfect example. So here you can see that for this texture, it says texture, right? And for this texture, it says texture cube. Now, why is this happening? So per default, when you download a sky like this, it usually comes as an HDR file. And when you import an HDR file into Unreal, it actually gets imported as a cube map. So it's basically like a three-dimensional texture, so to speak. And if you have a shader like this, a normal texture sample doesn't take a cube map. So when you put a cube map into a shader like this, you actually need like some math going into the UV, so you can project it properly and also be able to rotate it. I personally don't like that workflow a lot because it's just like cumbersome. So what I usually do is I resave the texture as an EXR, and an EXR is still internally an HDR file, but I can just drop it in, and then when I rotate the geometry, texture rotates with it, which does not happen when you use a cube map. So what we can actually do now is let's see. Do I have a version here that is already changed? And I don't. Which is absolutely fine. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna open this, and it will not tell me like hey Photoshop. Okay, let's do this. Just drag this in. So now the only thing that we're gonna do actually is we're just gonna go and save copy. We're in the same folder. That's fine. I'm not gonna call it copy. I'm actually just gonna call it EXR. And here we just changed this to open EXR. And again, it stays as an HDR file internally. No compression. I'm gonna hit OK. So now that this is saved, I'm just gonna drag this in here, and I will explain why this one is actually still useful. The cube map. So I'm gonna open this, and you can see it has the VT. That stands for virtual texture. We don't want this to be a virtual texture at all. So we're just gonna search here in the texture settings. And let's just like turn this off, and it does a little magic, and then we're good. I'm gonna save this, and then I'm gonna browse for this. Select it. I go back to shader, and I'm just this. Now the arrow is gone. All right. Beautiful. It is still something though. Okay, now we're back. Cool. So with that said, I'm gonna apply this shader now to my edit sphere. I can see kind of looks the same. We have all these ranges. So, but this is clearly wrong now because this is way too bright, and we don't have this exposure for such a low setting. Because we can see that there's lights inside of the houses, right? But these local lights, they actually have a very low intensity. They might be using like 1,500 to 2,000 lumen. And if I would put a light in here with that value, you actually wouldn't be able to see it. Because of the huge range that these have. So I'm going to take like a point light here. And I'm gonna change the values down here. You can change the units. I'm gonna use lumens because lumens is what you can find on the actual packaging of light bulbs that you buy. So you can basically say like, I have this light bulb in my living room, and it has like that intensity. So you can then just feed in the value here, and you get the same thing. So let's say we go with like 2,000. So did you see like I actually did get something. But not really like a lot. So if I'm like go up here, so we can the light is clearly doing something, right? But you can see if I go out here, this by no means looks like what we can see over here with the lit interiors. And that again is because right now the sky is actually having the brightness of daytime and not of this actual setting. So I'm gonna actually keep this light in here. So that's gonna be interesting to see. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn back my HDR visualization thingy. And if we remember our sky like 25 candela per square meter. So now again we get into this field of artistic liberty to a certain right. So if I like measure, you can see this is like 2,100. There's like 4,000 on the brighter cloud. There's probably a lot more here, but we can rarely see it. And also super trick. Like when the values are so bright in the image, and when I measure them, and you can't see the numbers anymore because Epic has a dark outline for the text. What you can cheat is you basically look at it, and oh no, I can't read the number. So you just go into the exposure compensation, and you basically just compensate it down, and you see the value is still what it actually reads. So the value measure is not influenced by this at all, but now you can read it again. So that's my little hot fix for when I use this. Again. Now, so where do we actually measure? And I decide for myself in this case, you know what? I'm just gonna measure in the center of the top of the sky dome, and that is like again artistic liberty. Like there is no rule for this. There is no. But like if I consider this to be an average, right? Like where the sun is, the sky is the brightest. Opposite to the sun is going to be the darkest. So my range tells me like, hey, it's logical to measure right straight up into the center. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna open my instance here again, and let me just slide this over. Can I like over here? It's better. So. Now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna slide this down until we can read like 25 nits here. So let's do 200. Okay, so we're still at like 246 here. So let's actually 50. Yeah, still too bright. What was it? 25. So let's actually go with 15. Ooh, now we're too dark. Let's go with 25. Okay, we're 30. I think 30 is fine for now. We don't have to match it like super exactly. So now you can see that this is a completely different story than what we had before. And now what we need to do is we need to adjust our actual exposure to compensate for this. So what are we gonna do? Well, we gonna go into post-process volume. We this, and now we're gonna set something that sort of looks good for us. I'm gonna eyeball. I'm gonna say it's probably gonna be around 7. And yeah, that's pretty good. Also, we can see that this looks completely broken, and that is because, of course, we haven't recaptured our skylighting. So we're just gonna do that. And now this is completely different. But also we have a problem. It still looks wrong because of the sun, obviously. So first thing for now, just gonna turn off this light here, because we want to make sure that the stuff that we have. So now our sun, very bad thing. I think we can. Let's rotate the sky a little bit so we can actually maintain our sun rotation here, even though it's like let's do something like this. Again, I have to recapture, change slightly. Now our sunlight is completely off. Of course it is. We have way too much brightness. We are also not enough because if we have a scenario like this, we would have some really very long shadows. Even though again we don't have shadows, we just assume that there would be a little bit of sun. So one thing, if your sun and your gizmo is weird, that's probably because it's local space. You can click this one up here, and it cycles between local worlds. Direct this out. We can see this, and so. What we need now is we actually need to rotate this to be a lot more flat. So that's the first thing that we're gonna do. Now I'm gonna switch it actually back to local because now you can see I get the axes better. Fix this a bit, and now what we want to do is kind of want to go like this. So it's not super accurate, but it is gonna be like lower here. With the sun coming in like this. And then what we also need to do is we need to actually fix our colors and our intensities. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put this to 0. I will turn on again my visualize HDRI. So here we have 3.6. All right. So if we say that we just go one step brighter, that would be like 4.6. And you can see we basically already have that. Because the thing is we don't actually have a sun here. And the brightness that comes from this is basically already the brightest here, and we already have this almost one step difference. But we can see there's a little bit. So here we have 3.6, here we like 4.3. So we can add 0.3-ish with our sun. So let's do 10, 20. All right. So now you can see we added a tiny little bit of sun. So there's our shadow. You can see it. So I remember this number 20 lux. 20 lux is actually accurate for something that is very late in the evening. So I'm gonna do 200 so I can see it more. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna match the colors. And one thing that I really like to do and that I highly recommend any of you use temperature. Because don't go in and do like sunlight is like this. Don't do it unless you do something that is A, highly stylized, or B, it's something that is like I don't know, like a weird planet or something, where for some reason the sun is blue, or whatever, or you have like you want to emphasize like a swamp feeling, like an isolated area, and you can maybe nudge it towards something greenish or something. So of course there is some artistic freedom. But if we talk about like regular stuff, don't ever touch this. Keep it on white. hit the color, and you can see it already got a bit warmer because per default it's 6,500 Kelvin. And 6,500 Kelvin is the white point basically. So we're gonna check this, and since this is very late in the day, we can actually go down quite a bit. We can go to like 1,600, and you can see now this kind of like matches the feel. However, it is way too strong. So what we need to do again is just go back here, and we're gonna do 20, and now you can see it does add a bit more, which is not perfectly realistic, but you can see the colors really look nice. And if we go back here, we can suddenly see that okay, this kind of seems more balanced. And then if we go to our point light here. Actually, let's do like 1,200. That is what they usually are. Again, I'm actually gonna turn on temperature because most of the interior lights work with temperature as well. And a lot of the interior lights are actually very warm. That is something that most people don't really know because our eyes also adjust differently. But especially when you do photography, you'll notice that a lot of the lights that we have inside our houses, our apartments, they're actually very warm, and they usually are between 2,700 and 3,600 Kelvin. So I'm gonna go with 1,000 right now, and let's turn it on. And I need to get rid of this. So now you would say okay, that's still not like super bright, right? And that is usually not what you like sort of get. And that is correct. So let's just make it a bit brighter by having lights, which is also a very common thing. Because when stuff is dark, we add more lights. Because that's what we also do in our homes when it's dark. So I'm just gonna put this in. And we ignore like all the shadow stuff for now. So this is what we have here. And now the fun thing is obviously that when you look from the outside. It's off. We do have something that matches a lot better when we look at this. I think these lights are even warmer, so that's like a difference. But we can see that our interiors are starting to do something as well. So now the thing is kind of like still looks very dark, and that's correct. And that is because right now the exposure that we have is something that is pleasing for what we see outside. And again, what we need for this, and this is what games do, is we need dynamic exposure. So if we just go in here and we reduce this to maybe 5.5, now we're starting to get somewhere. And of course we get this becoming brighter because that is very natural to happen. I'm just getting really annoyed with these really hard shadows here. That's not very beautiful, not very natural in that sense. But for now that's okay. We can change that. But it's also not necessarily super important for what I'm trying to show right now. So here you can see that now we have this set up. We could maybe even go to like 5. So now this matches really well. If we look at something so bright, it will actually go back to something a little bit different. But again, it will not actually go up to 7 because default auto exposure always tries to aim for a medium gray average of the image. So if you would like to have this look darker than it did when I did this, but you still want to be able to have
to
the
have
five
for
here
when you
for
go
when you
into
go
something.
into something. There's two ways of doing that, and we will look at these ways in the next lesson. So this is going to be it for this time. Thank you so much for watching. And see you in the next lesson. In our little fundamental series regarding exposure and how to set up something pleasing in terms of just overall values and the tools we can use for this. So the last thing I want to talk about here for now is that you may remember that I have exposure tweaked like this. And if I go outside, it does adjust a little bit, but it never really goes back to this. So there's two ways that we can fix this. I'm going to show you one way now, and the other way I will show this in the last project that we're going to do in this course. It is a little bit more involved. It's a little bit more advanced. So for now we're going to use the simple way. So I have my post-process volume selected, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scale it down. However, there's a little problem. And it is kind of like have trouble seeing how big it actually is. And if I do remember correctly, I have to see because Unreal has restructured the menus a little bit. There is a way to draw brush polies. So if we go to the settings and down to previewing draw brush polies, now you can see that it's kind of like shaded. So that means that when I go down like here, you can see the intersection like really well. And this helps us to scale this a lot better with the size that we kind of like need here. And this can be a bit of like a pain to do this properly. But I think yeah, I'm just gonna make it. Why is it always deselecting this? Okay. Tiny little bit more. Let's do 0.6. And okay. That's the 0.55. So this should work. And then we're gonna scale this one down to like 0.3. Oops. Oh no. Oh yes. Excuse me. I had this locked, which is obviously not very smart in this case. So let's do 0.3. Now I can basically see this better. So we can also just like actually I have no idea which one it is. That is the wrong one. Here. So here we can scale this better. 0.4. Yeah. This. That looks right. So now we have scaled. And what we want to do is we want to go down in our post-processing volume, and we want to uncheck infinite extent. Because what this does is it applies it to like everywhere. All right. So we want to uncheck this, and now you can see something has happened because now I'm not being affected by this volume anymore. So we're gonna do blend weight 1. Actually, let's play it safe. We do blend weight 2. We're gonna have our volume selected. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna lock this at 5 and 5. Which is like reasons. So the next thing that I'm gonna do is actually hold and drag it and I create another one. And now I'm just gonna scale this a lot. You can scale this a lot, or you can use the infinite extent. It doesn't really matter. Also, I'm gonna turn off the brush polies. And now what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna do 7 here. So now we have this, right? And then if I select this one again, the first one, there is the actually priority of this one is 1. So this small one will override the big one, and then we have a blend radius, which is and this one is 0, which is the distance of where it kind of like. So now if I take this and I fly in here, you can see this is happening. So now we have exposure 5, and if I fly out again. I have exposure 7. So of course this was just like very rough and dirty in terms of balancing this. However, that is one of the quickest way to get control over your interior spaces is by adding these post-process volumes. And like I said, there is a more advanced version which will actually use exposure compensation curves. However, we're gonna look at this when we do the big exterior project where we also have the interior. And I'm gonna really dive into the nitty and gritty with all of you to make this work. So one last thing that I would like to tackle and talk about is how like what is EV100 actually, and how does it relate to like actual cameras. And that is something very important. Because remember I said for setting up your lighting, there's a lot of helpful tools that come from like photographers like things like that. So one of the other tools that photographers have is called the Sunny 16 rule. And it's a little bit like this. But there's also like a lot more charts. So you can get so deep into charts. It's madness, but it's also fun. So anyways, what this is when you're out in the field, you need to set something in your camera, right? You need to set an ISO, which is the sensitivity of your sensor. You need to set a shutter speed, which is how long is the lens open, so how much light hits the sensor. And then you have your aperture, which is the size hole that it creates when it opens. And that also increases the amount of light that comes in. It's like your iris from your eye, right? Adjusting the size. So all these three are basically what we call the exposure triangle. And there's the same thing. You can have like a different aperture. And then have like depending on how you balance these settings out, you can like have the same image but with completely different values. But that's super irrelevant for now. But it is a little bit like how we balance these things out before. So what this shows us here is like, okay, so this is like a sunset setting, right? And this means our aperture, if this was like a photo camera, should be 4. All right. So, but what about the other values? And this is the thing. So like Sunny 16 usually gets specified the following way. ISO of your sensor is 100. Shutter speed is 125th of a second. And then if you use f4, that is gonna let enough light through the camera to give you a pleasing image. So how about we try that? I'm gonna uncheck this, and I'm gonna switch the metering mode here, and I'm gonna use manual. And I will actually turn off the okay. Sorry. I will turn this post-process volume off for now. Where is it? Okay. And we will work on this. Okay, the outside one. All right. So I'm going to turn this off, and I will set the metering mode to manual. And now, how do we know what settings it uses? Well, it's very simple. We go down here to the camera tab, and now you can say we have a shutter speed of 60, ISO 100, and we do have f4. So that's pretty cool already. So if we do 125th, it will actually get darker. And ISO is 100, aperture is 4. So now you can see this is actually very dark. And this is another interesting thing because what we did, remember was that we just took this average of the 25 candela up here from the Wikipedia, right? However, the dynamic range of the sky always changes. So we don't actually know. Is this sunset? Because there is no sun. It might actually be after sunset already, because there is no sun anymore. So this may actually not qualify for what we saw here. So this value is probably something where the sun is visible, but it's like sunset with a red dot there being the sun. So what we can safely assume is we can basically balance our lighting around this value too. We can do that too. And then it will obviously change a little bit, because again we don't necessarily know what is specified here. We also have this beautiful picture here that has the sun still visible. And if the sun would be here, this would be a lot brighter. Like the sky would not be that dark. So what we can do is we can go in here and we can set like 50, 150. Yeah, I think something like this to make it look the same as before. We probably have to go. Let's do 250, something like this. So now we pretty much have something very similar to before. And again, this is not wrong at all. It is just the values are changing so much that again artistic freedom you have to decide a bit. So we may wanna bump the sun a little bit here. Because this is kind of like what we would get during a time of day like this. And then we recapture. All right. So now this matches a lot better. And of course, this color here does not match with this here. That is of course I bumped the sun and all that kind of stuff. So it wouldn't be like we're decoupling this because of there not being a sun. However, so now we've used this, right? So we have used this to make this setting work. Now we have a very big problem though. If I go back to my post-process volume, now I have proper actual camera settings, which is of course really cool. However, if this would be a cutscene camera, then I would switch from a cutscene camera to gameplay, and in gameplay I would actually use the EV values, because I'm using auto exposure, you can't do auto exposure with the camera values. You would need to manually switch. You can see no, this doesn't match. So you need to lock this, and now you need to figure out. Is this 10? Like 10. Now I switch to manual. No, does not look the same. So you would need to figure out what is actually happening. How does it work? And this is because EV100 follows a very specific rule set. So you can see it actually here. So this is like the Wikipedia for exposure value. And exposure value again goes with like this is the EV scale, and it translates to these aperture numbers. These shutters here at ISO 100 intensity for the film. So what I can do now is I have my shutter speed at 125. My ISO is 100. Aperture is 4. Cool. So I can look into this. So here we have the line for aperture is 4. I have 125th, and that means my EV is actually 11. So now if I go in here. And I switch this to auto exposure, and I switch this to 11. And now I switch back and forth. You can see they're exactly the same. And this is the importance to understand that EV100, even though these are like numbers that simulate f-stops, they are not f-stops. And you can basically create these settings first and translate them to EV100, or you can say I actually want to create the EV100 setting first, and then you can do some math to convert it into something over here. And now the question is like, okay, but this all seems random and arbitrary. Like how do you decide where to go with these values? And here again is where the photography becomes incredibly like useful. So the shutter speed, the ISO don't matter as much in like the video game realms. But what is really important is the aperture, because the aperture is what creates depth of field. Right. So if you have a lower aperture of like let's say 1.8, you get a lot more depth of field. So let's say you don't want that much depth of field. So how do you basically get these values with a different aperture? So of course you can go in here and you can look at this line and you can say okay, I need EV11, but I need an image that is like super crisp, right? So like I basically need like let's say F16. Because when you have F16, your image is going to be very sharp, and that will translate to actually one fourth of a second in terms of like shutter speed. So what we can do is we can do this and this, and we're actually sorry, that was the wrong way around. Let me quickly check again. I'm gonna do one like because these are always kind of like actually I have something really fun which is where is it? Just one second. Because the screen messing with. Okay. Okay. So here we can always basically put these in. So we can say like whatever we kind of want to have here. So we can calculate all these nice values of like okay, let's see. So like I have one for the second I have F16 and my ISO is 100. Let's go in here. So and I can compute this. So that means that my EV is like actually 13.33. And so here you can just use all these things, and it can get really convoluted. But for example, one reason why this is really cool is let me quickly open this the side. So quite often when I work with lighting, I actually use reference from Flickr. Because Flickr is amazing because it shows you the camera values of what something was shot with. So you can replicate it, and that is incredibly powerful. So let's try like sunset street. Oops. And let's try to find something that does not look super photoshopped. So here you can also see the limitations of camera, right? You can clearly see this is exposed for this and this blows out. So let's see. Okay, so here we have this. All right. So this is the data. Okay. So we have F4. Where? Why does it always my stuff around here? Okay, so we have F4 like here, and we have 1/640 of a second. So this, and we have ISO 320. Okay. So now we have an EV 100 that is 11.67. So if you would basically say like I want to create a photographic scene that looks like this. And now it's not broken again here. Okay, so this is weird. Sometimes because the monitor I have on the left, whereas sometimes like the windows between it's an HDR monitor, and sometimes the visualization of the browser breaks when I move it from the HDR screen. It's actually not that blown out. And I thought it looked a bit like intense, but I thought like maybe that's just how the picture was taken. But anyway, so now we know this shot was taken with EV 11.667. So what we can do is we can just put this to this one, and we can do like 11.67, and also obviously we're already pretty good here, 0.677. And now what we can potentially is basically now adjust the lighting in our scene to match this reference based on the EV values that we extracted, and we know that these are the settings that we can set on the manual camera. So that is a way of working and exposing your images correctly. So you can work with the reference. And we can clearly see that looking at this here, we can actually make our sky a bit brighter. So this is definitely very close, but still we can make this brighter a little bit, and then we'll also get more lighting here on our stuff. Because if we look at this stuff here, that is very close to the streets that we saw before. So it should definitely be more around here in terms of exposure. Not exposure in terms of intensity. So I raised it from 250 to 709, and that is a lot better. And we can go here into our skylight, and recapture this. So yeah. And then obviously for something inside of here, we would completely modify our values again to have this nicely visible and not be so dark. But again, this is very classic differences between all the values. So I hope this was really insightful. I know these things are a bit convoluted, but understanding camera exposure and the relative values that come with it, so to speak, it is so important, and it's gonna make your work really balanced. So I really highly recommend try these things out, try the different techniques, try to get some free content from the Epic Marketplace, like some city streets, and even just looking at this one again here, take the free city sample from Epic, the one from the Matrix demo. Take it. Create a sky like this. These sky domes that I have here, they're all from Polyhaven. They're all free. There's many online resources to get sky HDR textures. So use that, take these settings and make it look the same. So you can just learn, and you'll also see here, for example, this is very good. There's a neon sign. And this neon sign is not completely blown out. And of course it is because the neon sign is actually not super intensely bright, and we still have a lot of light. However, if you go to like Japanese street. Can I write? Street night. you will see a lot of pictures where the neon signs are way more blown out. The whole lighting is a lot more blown out. And that is, of course, because the exposure is raised even further because the environmental lighting is so low. And once the lighting from the sign starts to actually become visible because of the exposure that we have, the sign itself will start to really blow out like we can see in these examples here. So all these concepts are very important to understand. And again, we'll tackle them again when we work with the big outdoor environment. But this is it for now with the fundamentals of what I consider to be like really important things to understand when it comes to lighting. I hope it was really interesting and also fun to watch. And with the next lesson, we're gonna start doing some proper content work. And we will look at how to render out props and beauty shots of your assets or works, and look at characters too. So that's gonna be what's up for the next one. I hope you had fun. Have a great time. Thank you so much for watching. Hello and welcome to our next session in this course. And which one we will look at some proper good stuff this time around, which in this case means that we will actually with some asset presentations. So this is a topic that is interesting for pretty much everyone, be it students or professionals, because when you're a student, you want to attract some potential employers with the quality of your work. And even though as a professional, you kind of want to some degree do the same thing, but also you just want to show off your work in a good frame. So we're gonna look at this over the next few lessons here, and some of the content that we will be using will be this FPS Assault Pack. It used to be free, so I have a bunch of these in my library, and this is actually something that I would recommend to everyone. Go into these monthly collections and stuff like that, and try to get your hands on as much free content as you can, because it's always really nice to have it at your hands in case you might need it. Especially for me, since I'm a lighting artist, I don't actually build a lot of my own assets. I mean, sometimes I do, but quite often for me it's also just interesting to get some stuff for free from the marketplace. Sometimes I buy stuff too, and use that to create good moods, lighting, test out all these kind of different ideas. So we'll be using the weapons here. We'll also be using this vehicle which was free. And then we'll also be using some mega scans and some of the cars from the city sample. That was the Matrix stuff. So yeah, that's the content that we're going to be working with. Again, I don't think that the weapons and the tank vehicle is still free, but maybe you happen to have it as well. Otherwise there's other free vehicle assets that we can get. It's not really that big of a problem. So with this out of the way, let's jump right into Unreal. And I think that what we're gonna do is fairly interesting because I think that a lot of people usually do all sorts of presentations also in, for example, Marmoset. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it in Marmoset. I do want to give everyone a little thing to think about, which is like when you want to be hired as a game artist, it is very important for a potential employer that they can see your skills with the tool set that you potentially end up working, right? And of course, not all studios work on Unreal. However, a lot of the techniques that we used to create images that we're gonna do, they're similar-ish in different internal technologies or even Unity. Like the workflow might be different, but the concept that's behind it is very similar. And one thing that I personally dislike might be too strong of a word, but like one thing that I think is more interesting for me when I review stuff in a position where I'm like looking for people to hire is when I see someone do something in Marmoset, I don't necessarily know how good is their technical skill with the game engine actually, because the problem with Marmoset is yes, it is sort of like a real-time renderer, but they have introduced so many more tools that actually increase the quality tremendously that are not fully real-time anymore. So that's one important thing. So like when you do the render out screenshot thingy, it upscales a lot of the effects. It even modifies the effects. So for example, for reflection tracing, it uses a lot more rays when it renders out the beauty shot than it does in the viewport. So it's not only that it renders a higher resolution, it's also that it renders way higher sampling that would not run in real time anymore. So that's one thing. But the other thing is it is not crazy hard to make good looking materials in Marmoset. And if someone makes some really sophisticated shaders in Unreal, and also understands the components and how to combine them in a certain way, to me as a potential employer, it tells me more about the skills of the person on how to make something good inside of a game engine. And that is the only reason why I personally prefer seeing like portfolio work and all that rendered out from a game engine, not from Marmoset. Also in the past when I was a bit more active in the forums, a lot of people did actually struggle with achieving the quality that they achieved in Marmoset inside of Unreal. So they were like asking is it possible to get this to look that good? And I'm here to say yes, of course, it is absolutely possible. So let's jump right in. One thing that you notice over here in my top left, we have this texture streaming pool budget issue. That is not a super big problem. It is like for some reason. The budgets of things have been increasing over the years a lot. Even Epic uses a lot more bigger textures, more textures. But for some reason they never actually updated the config files internally to reflect the generation. So these values are still the same pool size values from 8 years ago or something when like Unreal 4 became publicly available. That's 8 years. I think it's 8 years. Time flies. Anyways, so what we can do is we can go down here into the console and we type r.streaming pool size. And now we see it marked here. And the good thing is if we just hit this, nothing really happened. We can look at the output log, and then we see this is like 1 gigabyte right now, and that is definitely not enough for like modern production things. So the output log open, we can click the CMD again, and then again, and press the arrow up. We actually get the same command again that we had. So one really valuable anytime you want to put in these, if you just put in the command without any number or setting, and you look into the output log, you'll actually see what is it right now. And then you can either take a mental note or you can write it down. Probably that's better at least for me because I'm all over the place with my thoughts. And I don't remember. And I've already changed it. So that's one thing. Also, if you just change it here and you want to have the old value back, you just restart Unreal because these overrides they're only per session. They're not like now the new default forever. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go in and type 3000. And now you can see that we have this and for some reason we're actually not really getting an update here. That is rather hilarious because this is all good. Well, we'll see.
Well,
if
we'll
this
see if this
continues, and if we get
continues,
any
and if we
issues.
get any
It might
issues.
actually
It might
also
actually
be
also
just
be
like a
just like a bug
that can happen
that can happen
sometimes.
especially since
well, we are above 5.0 in the version, but like, anytime you fix something, you break something. That is usually how it goes. So looking at these portfolio renders, there are obviously many different styles in doing these, right? It comes down to your taste, your artistry, many different reasons, right? So let me just Google something on the side. So if we, for example, we're gonna start. So like, if we look at this, right? First thing, like there's stuff that I personally would consider to be less tasteful. So I would say like, hey, that looks cool as for working with it. Like for example, this one here, when we have this weapon. So this is something where like I would use this to work like this in Substance Painter or Quixel or whatever when I texture the thing. But I would never use this to present a weapon in like a portfolio shot because it's sort of like it's too random. We could look at this one here, where we also have the weapon floating in space. However, this one, and as my opinion, this one is a lot better because this one does not have a blurry background. So the focus point is completely on the weapon, and obviously we have very meticulous sort of like lighting, highlighting all the shapes of the weapon because weapons obviously like a lot of geometry that goes into them, a lot of like little things sticking out here and there, and then most importantly, weapon they live by their surface definition. It is not easy to be a good weapon artist. It's a very hard job to make weapons really believable, sell the different types of materials. So this is actually quite good. What I also really like is a different kind of presentation, which is first of all it is on a surface material. This one, and then second of all, which personally I'm a huge fan of that, is to actually have a few add-ons, like this, I don't know what it is, like a magazine extension thing, probably it is the magazine. I'm disclaimer, I'm not a weapons guy. I have. So I may say something stupid, and anyone listening will be like, how does he not? No, I am not a weapon guy. So I'm all about sexy materials and these kind of things. I've looked at a lot of weapons, surface definitions, but I don't know technical things of weapons at all. So now you know. Anyways, I really like. Whoops. I really like stuff like this, where the weapon sort of rounded. Here this is nice because we get focus, we get a little bit of field. I do not necessarily like the texture of this, for example. I kind of like this more, also with logo and stuff. So think about these things. There can be like a lot that goes into the presentation of a weapon prop or something. Stuff like this, I kind of feel a little bit about it as well. Because one thing is like yes, it sells the surface definition and all that. Like you can see like this really metal and plastic. I just think the perspective is a little bit unfortunate. Also, it's kind of like what the weapon would look like in first person. It's similar-ish, but still it's a bit like off. So like these are a lot of things to consider. This is actually quite beautiful, I think. It still has background that sort of like the R shapes, but is by no means as busy as this one. So it doesn't really take away anything from it, and it just moves around the weapon very beautifully. It's a very clean presentation, like a logo here. So So that is the first thing to know
that
these are all
kind
of different in many ways. And what we're gonna start with is we're gonna start with a floor. Because what we also will be doing is we're gonna sort of build like a multi-purpose scene as well. So we can use the scene not just for weapons, but potentially for the vehicle, for other things as well. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to our engine content. We type template or something close to this, and let's filter here for static mesh, and we're gonna work with the template for now. So I'm gonna drag this in, and this is where we are. Let's for convenience reasons zero this guy out. And now that we have that, the first thing that we need a proper material for this. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna build sort of like a multi-purpose material that we can use for multiple different things. So here we have a material that is called floor, and as you can see, there's not a lot of purpose with this one. So we only have a color here, which is very dark. We do have some roughness. So the first thing I want to do is introduce some switch parameters. There we go. And we call this base texture enabled. And per default, it's gonna be false. And we're gonna put that in here. And we don't worry about the error right now. And then we're gonna do the same thing here. And we just call it roughness texture enabled. And again, false. So now here's an interesting thing. I usually don't add normals to my floors. You can even go further as when you render like organic assets, rocks and stuff. You can actually instead of a floor use like a terrain, and then still use like a flat color for your terrain, so it looks like a proper asset presentation floor. And then when you drop a rock there, you actually add like a paintable terrain layer with some really nice blending that is, for example, some pebbles, and then around the rock a terrain shader with the pebbles that bleeds into the presentation floor. A lot of different things you can do. And for pebbles, you would probably want some normals. I believe that for stuff like this, you don't really need normals. Like the most important texture for me with stuff like this is the roughness. And what a lot of people what I usually tell my students and what really helps them to understand materials more readable is that I tell my students roughness and normals is actually the same thing, but on a different level of scale. And once you start thinking about it like that, you realize that you can actually get away with a lot of surfaces that look really good without actually using normals. Because you don't always need that very deep information. Like if I take a sanding paper and I put it on like a very smooth surface and I start sanding it. Like that is something that you would replicate with a roughness texture. However, if you scale the sanded area up, if you could virtually just take it and scale it up, or if you would zoom in with like a microscope, you would see that kind of looks like someone took a needle actually really put crevices into the surface, which you would then reflect with a normal map as soon as they get big enough, because that's when the normal map kicks in when you see these shading differences. But it's on a such smaller scale, which is what we call microfacets. But it is geometrical detail that changes the surface. So it really helps you to think about surface variation and stuff like that to make materials interesting, like roughness and normal, exactly the same thing, just on a different level of scale when speaking in physical terms. Anyways, little excursus here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna introduce some textures here, and I don't think that I have something in here just like randomly. Let's see. We never know. Because there was actually some test level thing that came with the master level of the vehicle. So I hope I didn't cut out there, but like the computer was just hanging a bit. It was trying to load all these textures. So what I'm looking for. Yeah. Okay. This seems a little bit. So what I'm looking for is actually some tiling texture content. So let's just start here. There's just too many high resolution things in here. So it kind of starts fetching it from the external hard drive, and I think it just starts lacking. So sorry for that. Nothing much I can do about this. Yeah. So there's not really some super good stuff in here. So what we're gonna do, and this is actually perfect for illustrating what I want to do here as well. So we're just gonna get it straight Quixel. One thing that really annoys me, I'm not sure if other people have that problem, but I guess they do. I have to sign in every time into Quixel when I open it, even though I say remember me. So I don't have to do that. For some reason it just never remembers me. So one really cool thing is this here, the Imperfections collection. I love this thing. It is so good. And there are so many really cool like roughness variations. It is just like super awesome. Really awesome to use. And I don't even know what to pick now. There's so much to choose from. I think. Yeah, let's maybe go with the scratched metal first. And I think highest quality is going to be 8K. Let's do that. We're gonna go with high quality. Just gonna hit this. This is really interesting. It didn't actually add it. Okay. This is interesting. So I do have to have the filter still on. So now this was added as a virtual texture. And we want to turn that off. We don't need that. Okay. Let's just save this. Okay, beautiful. So we can do what we do now is we're gonna just add this to both. So it doesn't really matter too much. The most important thing is that we actually have something in here. So I'm gonna turn this into like a parameter. Call it base color. Oops. So like this. And we're gonna choose. Actually, let's do this differently. Let's do like a component mask parameter. So this is important because we don't necessarily want to filter out colors, but we also don't want the texture to be green per default. So this one is great because we can then just set here which one we want. And of course we need to switch this first as well because we may not actually want it. Base texture mask enabled goes true and false goes into here. And now we can decide what we want. Since we probably turn it off, we're going to be using the color anyways. Now we just have all the options that we could want. So then I'm going to copy this, and we're going to go in here with the green channel. And one important thing that we need to do is that when we apply a texture like this, remember, this is what the green channel looks like. So we may want to have more contrast or more control over the values. So what I like to do is I like to use a lerp, which is this one. I'm gonna feed this into the alpha. Then I'm gonna put saturate in the output, which is sort of like a clamp, but just use saturate. It's better. and then what we want is like the A value is the dark value, the B value is the bright value. So what we can do is we can just like call this lows and copy it and call this highs. And the interesting thing, at least it used to work. Let's see if it still works. So if we put this to 0 and this to 1, the texture is going to look exactly as it was. So if we want to increase the contrast,
we
we
can
can
actually
go into minus values in the lows and values above 1 to the highest. And that way we can sort of like remix the texture. So let's try and see if that works. But first also we'll have to apply this to our beautiful ground. And now you can see that we have a material here. Our auto exposure starts kicking in, and this is rather interesting because it is trying to make our really dark base color into something rather bright. So before we continue with this, let's just add in under visual effects. Oh, not a sky atmosphere, but a post-process volume. So we have it here. Let's just drag it down a bit, so it's not in the way. And then also what we're gonna do is we're gonna make it infinite extent. And for now, what we're gonna do is the thing that I told you before that I don't do. But this is a little bit of a special case because we're just like slowly getting the scene setup done. Also I do work a little bit differently when I do these portfolio renders versus actual like environments with more complex interaction. So here now we're gonna lock the exposure to 1. And we don't really see, but that's fine for now. The next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna really and I mean really scale this thing up to like maybe not the post-process volume. Go back to where you were. So I mean the floor. Excuse me for that. So we're gonna make the floor rather big, and we need to see. We might need to increase it further, but it depends a little bit. We'll also give it a little bit more thickness, just so leaking reasons and stuff like that. And of course, we also gonna save our stuff here. Now we don't have any light source here, so we don't really see what is actually happening. Also, you can see that Unreal has this kind of like mode where it's like it shows the stuff here, even though there's like no light. So as soon as we put a light in, this should change. So let's go with like a rectangular light. And this is something that to me right now looks a bit like a bug. This is very interesting because usually it used to be like this in Florida when you had no lights whatsoever in your scene, that when you put objects in, that you basically get this almost like this unlit kind of view thing. So it was kind of like having a fake light. But the moment you actually put in a light source, it basically everything became pitch black area with the light source affected by this. But it is beautiful that we're actually having this problem right now because then we will find out how we can actually fix it in case something like this happens to you. So we're just gonna make sure that we're not like in some weird view mode, which it seems that we are not. Let's try something more by bringing in directional light, which is also completely invisible. So this is definitely something that is buggy. At least I haven't really had that before. Let's see if we have any wonky settings down here. So this is all good. So let's try something. Sometimes it helps to open a different map and then go back into the other one. So we can clearly see that the stuff here seems to be working. And if I go over to my content browser again, I'm just gonna search for a cube. And drag this in. So we can clearly see that we have some light and some shadows. So that is very interesting. So let's save this. Let's go back in here. All right. This is probably the weirdest thing I have seen in a very long time. So now how would we actually fix this? Since I don't exactly know what has happened, I don't really know. However, I can tell you what I did. What I did was I added a new level here. Just named it and opened it. So let's try something else. Let's try the new level, and then go with. Let's go with the basic one. So we see all of this working, and now what we're gonna do is we just delete all of this. And we'll delete this guy too. And we'll bring in again the template floor. Put it to 0. And we're gonna add our light. And now it works. So this is really weird. I have no idea what has caused this, but sometimes I vaguely remember I've had it in the past at least once, and it was kind of like it didn't really know what the map was that I added via the content browser. So I just remembered that this may have the issue. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna delete the level that I have here in the content browser. And I'm gonna save my current level as, and then we're just gonna do render scene again. So in case that ever happens to you, this is sort of like how you as a workaround fix it. And that is unfortunate, but at least we still have a scene that we can now work with. So we're gonna pause this for now, and then we're gonna come back in the next lesson and we actually start applying our things and throwing something cool together. So thanks everyone for watching, and see you in the next lesson. Hello and welcome to the next lesson. We are exactly where we left off. So let's take our stuff, get it back in shape, as we were planning to do before we had that really bugging out with the level file. So again, I'm gonna take floor here. I'm gonna put this to 20, 25. I will also add my post process volume down the way. and then
all the same again.
Infinite extend.
Set this to
0,
and here we
go
with
1. So now we can
we have our light source here.
It is not very bright, especially since we're now back in the realm of physical values. Even though I locked it to 1, we still have the EV100 setting applied in the project that I was talking about. So 8 candela, that's like 8 candlelights. That's not very bright. I will go down to advanced. I'm gonna change this to lumens. And that is really like a personal like 25 lumens. That is not a lot. So let's go at least with 500. So we'll get something proper here. And now let me find my material. There we go. So we'll put that onto the floor. And for now, you can see nothing really super fancy here. And of course. Let's make an instance first. We can always extend the functionality later. But for now, which is gonna do like a material instance for not having to fiddle around with the shader tree all the time when we want to tweak something. So this is applied. And if we look at this, like you can see, we have a very high roughness. We don't have any of these enabled. Very dark color too. It's pretty much like black. And I like to start off this way because I don't know what I'm gonna have anyways. So usually I just bring in all the elements and then I kind of like go from there. And again, it's super easy for us to tweak this and have like different things happen here. So for now, we're just gonna stay like this. I will remove this light here again, and so you will see while I do all these things, it will always come back to these aspects in some form of theoretical point of view. Like less is more. That is the way that I learned to do almost everything in my life regarding visuals and things. Before I entered the video game industry, I was studying graphic design, and even there, it was like always less is more. The first thing is less is more usually better because it's not over-engineered. It's not too busy, which is something that I see a lot with like student work or just people that have less experience that they add too much of stuff. Like if you just look at this here again, it is so simple and so pleasing. It really works. And the second reason for doing less is more is it is always more manageable. So I know that a lot of people like to spam a lot of lights for their portfolio scenes, like character light here and there and there and blue and yellow. I don't work like that. I'm really not a fan of that. What I usually start with. I dare say always. There are some exceptions, but in 99% of the cases, always start with the skylight. Now you may be thinking, why skylight? Well, the reason because I choose the skylight at the same time is also just the light that allows me to use an HDR. And you may remember that I was saying before that usually import my HDR textures as an EXR, and then I put them on the SkyDome. And I do that because I don't need extra math projecting HDR cube map file when I do that. But this means that I was using the SLS captured scene. So for portfolio asset presentation work, I don't really use the SLS captured scene unless I'm doing something very specific. What I always use is the specified cube map because I want to have control over the lighting of my object that is actually disconnected from what I can see in the background. So I don't want the skylight to capture the background and project that as lighting onto my object. So I'm gonna use SLS specified cube map, and then what I can feed in this cube map slot is actually not an EXR file, but it is an HDR file. So this slot needs a cube map, and the HDRs they get imported as cube maps per default. So that is what we want. So now I'm gonna be very honest. I don't remember anymore where I got all of these. However, it is super important that you have a huge collection of HDR images when you want to do that. And there's obviously many different ones. So you can have, for example. Something like this. I'm just gonna save this here. So you can have something like this. If you want the object gets lit with all these intricacies of being in this room. You can also go for example something like this. And these HDRs actually where I got them from Polyhaven. And it's really good to try these out and work with them. However, the ones that I collected over years are some very specific ones. Ooh. Okay. This is first. All right. I might need to restart the editor quickly, and we'll be right here. Okay. I think we're back now. I believe that like now that I restarted, it's also gone up here with the texture pool stuff. And I think when I was trying to load in this folder, it was trying to generate the previews and stuff. So it just kind of got really borked. So we're back in action. And so these are very specific HDRs that are made for asset presentation and things like that. So these are very special. They look weird, but they're basically not designed to create a realistic backplate or anything. But they are purely designed to create interesting highlights, shadings, and reflection on objects for presentation purpose. So that is very different than using stuff that we see here. I'm actually curious why the preview was so dark. But what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna take the studio here. And now the thing is, here we go. And you can see that we started seeing something, right? But not really that much. And that is because now we have to control the intensity via the actual skylight intensity. So you can see that we need to now do this thing here. Because before that, when we were sampling from the captured scene, we were controlling the brightness basically via the emissive from the texture that we were capturing. This time around, we feed in that HDR, and now we need to use this for the intensity. Now you actually
see something
really interesting here, which is this grid pattern. This grid pattern annoyed me so much. I googled around to figure out what was going on. And it is a problem that Daniel Wright, the guy who works on Lumen at Epic, he hasn't yet replied in the forum to the people claiming that was a problem, or just like documenting that stuff in the forum where we talk about problems and issues and equality and all these kinds of things. He hasn't replied to the post mentioning this yet. However, there is a way to kind of fix it. And I don't think that this is the proper way to fix it because it should be like fixed like in the back of how things are actually working. But there is this command which is called r.lumen screen probe gather radiance cache 0. So this means that these artifacts are caused by the radiance cache. And if we turn off the radiance cache, you can see the artifacts are gone. This is not a very elegant fix. Again, because the radiance cache is important, especially for performance reasons. However, it doesn't really matter in a scene like this. So in a scene like this, we can totally turn off the radiance cache. But speaking long term, this is definitely something that should be fixed. So now this does not look good at all. It doesn't really matter right now. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna throw things make the scene work, and then we start tweaking the values as we need to. So now let's look into this thing here, and I think there should be some stuff for example. So if we do this, we can clearly see that we have something here, and we can clearly see that we are getting some lighting that comes from our HDR. So like the thing is, we don't really see which part of the HDR is where right now. But we do know that if we open this again, we do know that we have at least 3 very bright windows here. And we have some over here. So it turns around, wraps around a sphere. We know that this one probably gonna end up on opposite of these ones. So we do get one here. This could be the small one, and we do get something way more intense here. This could be the big ones. And then we can obviously rotate our object, or we can just like rotate the cube map. All right. So this is usually the first that I do before I do anything with like actual lights. And what I also do is I think of how will I present this, right? So let's move this kind of like a little bit more to where the center of this whole thing is. So let's say we take this weapon, and we'll rotate it 90 degrees. And I'm gonna turn off the grid snapping here. And we can see that there will be some problems here with some of the stuff basically like sticking into the floor because we, as you can see here, we do have this issue of it kind of like looks nice here with the ambient occlusion, but you can also see that it doesn't really hit here. So what potentially should do is we should think about a way. How can we make this look a little bit more like organic? And one thing that I want to try is I want to rotate it a little bit. this. So now you can see it feels a bit. We still have a clipping issue here, which I am just very elegantly ignore right now because this is a lighting tutorial course in that sense. And I do like this more when it sort of sits like this. Now what I'm gonna do is I will duplicate this, and then I'm gonna turn on the snapping again, and we're gonna try to do this. I'm just gonna put them next to each other like this. Why is my camera so fast? So this is something that we can adjust here. And then when we have these speed levels, you can also use the mouse wheel to sort of like increase or decrease inside of it. So now I'm at the lowest with the mouse wheel, and this is basically the lowest that we can go. And for this work, we should probably go to 2, so now you can see super slow, but then I can go up the mouse wheel if I need to navigate faster. So this is kind of like the best of both worlds here. Yep. Kind of like this, I think. It seems that I have somewhat the axes up quite a bit here. But that's fine. Again. So. And now you can see this is actually starting to look super bad. And now before we continue tweaking this, one of the most important things that I can tell anyone is don't use the viewport camera when you do these things. Like now we have an initial setup. This is fine. Viewport camera, no problem. However, never ever render things with the viewport camera. Never tweak the lighting and your shot with the viewport camera. Because it looks bad and unprofessional. Because the FOV is bored and you don't really have proper controls. So always use the Cine camera actor. Always that one. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna unhide this buddy here. We right click to say pilot the camera actor. And now you can see that everything is kind of like a little bit different and feels a bit wonky and stuff. So the first thing that we kind of need to decide is what is the actual camera lens that we wanna look at this with. So per default, there's a bunch of settings that we kind of like need to look at. And here again, I have teased it before. It is actually really beneficial and important that you do know a little bit about cameras. So the first thing is I'm not going to use digital because that's not how you take pictures. Well, like you film, but I'm going to use DSLR. So this gives me the sensor size. And for the lens settings, I am not going to use universal zoom. And what I recommend to all of you, again personal experience and preference is only use the prime lenses and don't go below 50 for stuff where you want to close up, like show your objects. Because when we do these kind of lenses and we go in, do you see how it kind of feels like really skewed? Like how the object feels like super weird and skewed? Because now we have like a 12 so if we do like a 50 millimeter, it already looks like more. how should we say like
perspectively correct.
So I would
say
let's choose like an 85 for now. And then we just like to make this lower. And then what I'm going to do is now go out of this. And while I have it selected, I will make sure now you can see that my gizmo is completely off here. I'm going to switch this to local space. I'm going to hit the rotate, and then I will actually rotate this. All right. And now I need to see how I want to further. So I'm constantly switching back and forth here between the different modes. Okay. Now I will go back into this, and everything is obviously very blurry. So what we need to do now is we need to refocus our camera. There's a bunch of ways to do this. You could just like choose the color picker here, basically to sample something that you click on. It doesn't always work well. You could also track an object here that you enter, which is probably one of the simplest ways to do it. If you want more control, you can enable the debug focus plane, and now it's so far away that it is probably behind the floor. So what you can do is drag. And there it is. So now this is the focus plane in front of the weapons. And if we push it back, you can see now it starts colliding with them. So now it means that this here where the intersection is the point of the highest focus. Since we use a 85 millimeter lens though, and we're under a current aperture of 2.8. We don't get too much depth of field, but we do get a little bit back here. So if I turn this off, you can see there is a little bit of field that has like a transition from basically where everything here is sharp and a transition. So we can get more depth of field going down with the aperture to 1.8. As you can see, it just got more. If you don't want any depth of field, like if you go with 5, for example, you see no depth of field at all. I do like depth quite a bit, as I may have mentioned. So we can do this. And we can just nail in where we want the focus to be. Let's say we want it at the tip here. You can see now there's a lot more of this that is blurry. I think we should push it kind of like this, maybe. And I'm also not entirely sure. I may want. Not yet entirely satisfied with the shot. So now we can do something cool here. Let's try to do this. And let's try to get the most crisp details here, where we have the interactions. So now we see that we get this, and it does get rather blurry here. But also it's kind of like something that I would say looks pretty good. So now let's just adjust this one here, and you can see that this is like a lot more pleasing now. I want to also quickly look at the X rotation. What's this one? Let's make it like this. So now we're starting to get something that does not look too bad. And now would be the time to look into what do we actually want on the asset itself? Like how do we want this to look like? And this is where it also gets like fun and interesting now. So first of all, we can start by rotating the skylight. And you can see how it does completely change the mood all the time. So actually, let's do something like this. So I just reset this to 1. Let's see what happens if we put 2. So this is gonna be fun. So now what we can do is we can basically sculpt what we kind of want in terms of how this feels. And we can decide which is the way we want to massage this in here. So I think this looks quite good. And now it begins really cool. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open another viewport on my side here. And in the viewport, I will choose the camera actor. So and the reason why I do that is I wanna navigate outside of this view. So here's the thing. If you go out of the camera, you click it. And now it doesn't actually do this anymore. This is great. Because usually it shows you like a little viewport down here, and then you can pin it. Because the thing is you want to see what you do when you navigate around here and add stuff. So let's try to do it like so. Here you can see the cool stuff. So let's put this like here. And now, and as you can see, remember when I said less is more. Like this already looks really good, and high quality and all that. And we haven't even done that much yet. So this is really all about just tweaking the setting properly, setting up a camera that frames the shot well. This is absolutely no magic. This is just pure. Let's say good planning and foundation work here. So now what we do is now we're gonna actually add a rectangular light here. And now you can see I just throw this in like the most stupid way ever, and it's still kind of like it's kind of nice. So you see here these issues that we're getting, and this is because the what is it called again? The shadow. I'm so bad with remembering these names. Let's see. Just scrolling down here. Settings, project settings. Rendering. So I have virtual. Like I have the virtual shadow map turned on. And this is really good for exterior stuff. It can also work decently enough for interior stuff. But the thing is like the softening of the shadows that you get from it. It definitely has very hard limitations, as seen in the earlier lessons. So I have the support for ray tracing on here, and what we should do is we should potentially like you can see here like this looks quite borked. What we should do is we should most likely take that light and turn on ray traced shadows because this is the proper quality that we want. So from use project setting we go to enabled, and now you can see how this instantly turned into some really good looking shadows. So if I get close here, you can see how we have this proper effects here. And even if I make this smaller. We can totally see how we get a proper penumbra. So this is kind of cool, but it also looks like someone took a picture with his phone. So this kind of like the flashlight look. It's actually not that bad. I mean, I've seen people do that in portfolios that they render everything with this kind of like flashlight look, and you'll see like this is the flashlight look. It gets even more flashlight if we do take the light here. So the proper flashlight obviously is that the light comes from the camera. So if we just rotate this, and I hate doing this stuff when we're like in a weird space. Yeah, so just rotate this. And then move over. So like if we hold the camera here, and we just say okay, so this is like our camera flashlight now. So this is kind of like the flashlight look, because you always get like the shadow in the back. And also one thing very important, the flashlight is not that so big, we get way too soft shadows. So what we would need to do is we would actually make this like a really tiny light source. So we get this super strong hard shadow. So there we go. There you have the flashlight look. And it can be fun. But that's not what we're doing today. No flashlight look right now. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to see if we can do something else that is a bit cool here. So again you can see depending on what types of shadows you want, you need to adjust your light size, right? Like the shape of how big is the light actually. Because without it you like when it's this small, you always get these harsh shadows. Maybe you want that, nothing wrong with that. But it all comes down to how do you want to present this. And you can see that this is starting to actually look really realistic because of the values that we have here and how it's all exposed. So now would probably be a really good time to think about what our floor looks like. It's just gonna move this away quickly. And let's go over to our floor instance here. And this now might go horribly wrong. Like I don't know. Let's see. So let's do this. And there you go. And obviously, I totally forgot to hook up some tiling parameters because I was elsewhere with my thoughts. So let's just do that here. I'm gonna do these separately. So I'm gonna do this. Take this here. All right. And then what we will also do is we'll just add another scalar here for metalness. So let's save this. What did I? Base color time. Okay. How does? Oh well.
Whatever.
Whatever. Not super. So let's go in. So let's go in here and increase this to like 5. And if we bring this back in, we can see that does not look too bad. So now that we have this, you can see this is only the roughness. I did not adjust anything in terms of like base color or whatever. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add another thing because once we have something that we like, might just wanna bring it up or down. Or Actually, I'm sorry. Sometimes I think I should do it one way, but then I think let's do it another way. So let's try and basically get this to be more reflective, so we get actual some reflection from the weapon here. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to drop the highs. There we go. And now you can see we gained reflection, but we lost some contrast. And what we will need to do is there we slowly go back. So now I'm gonna try to massage it against each other to create more contrast with the scratches and still remain some of the reflectivity here. So now we have a problem here because our base color is way too dark for it being metal. So now you can see when we turn this into metal and we have this, we actually get some really nice contact reflection and some other stuff. Although I think should be a bit darker, so we get a bit more like separation here in terms of like weapon versus the floor. Like the floor is almost like too busy looking. So I do think that something like this works quite well. So as you can see, this could already be like a nice way of doing this, and it is rather simple here. Like again, this is nothing too fancy. And what I would like to do there might still be a bit of like artifacting. What I want to do is I want to go into the post-process volume, and now we're just like cranking some of the settings, so we can make sure that we're actually getting like the best quality of what we're doing. So Luben global illumination. I'm gonna just set the scene quality to 4. It should not make a huge difference, but the reflection probably will at least a little bit. Let's keep an eye open. Scene detail also help us with smaller shapes. Final gather will make cleaner, but there's not much happening here, so all good. This work for later. And then lumen reflections. This one here is definitely gonna have the biggest impact, which it doesn't do now. Here we can see it just fills in a bit more of the actual with the screen space reflections. Now it's kind of like it just really depends. We can try and set this one, but it doesn't really change much. That's all right. I think it's kind of like good enough. So. Here you can see this is the first kind of way we can light this. We can do this. And we can. And this is like super simple. Like now we just only have like this one skylight, and additionally we have rather small but intense rectangular line. Trying to click this here. So yeah. This is the first step to make this work. In the next video, we will look at how we tweak this a bit, adjust it, and also how we can make some nice variations, play around a little bit more creatively. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next lesson. Hello and welcome to the next session where we will improve this a little bit more, tweak some settings, and then also make like a little variation for this one. So one thing that I just wanted to note here, when we look at this, there is obviously a bit of a problem with the lumen reflections. And one way that we can fix this, which is totally valid for portfolio purpose, obviously, is by just switching this here to standalone ray tracing. And you can see now this slaps quite good, I would say. Especially when we decide to render this out. So for now, let's just say we do that. But then I want to look at a few more basic settings. One thing that I really hate is the Unreal integrated lens flare feature. I guess it's not quite enough to give us any, but I really urge anyone to please don't use it because it actually makes your stuff look cheap because it is very shitty looking lens flare. If you want to do lens flares with particle systems like that, that looks good, but don't really use this stuff. There can be a way to make it super bad, and we'll potentially go into the exterior. But don't do that. It makes your stuff look cheap. However, what is actually quite cool is here in the bloom settings. And this is the standard bloom, and right now we may not see a lot from this. I will show you just where it will make quite a bit of a difference. So what we should always do here is change to convolution. And you saw a little bit of the whole image just changed. Like that's fine. If I go to my rectangular light here, let's just say our default is like 75. Let's try something extreme, trying to illustrate a point here. And try to get highlight somewhere. But it doesn't really want to do it. Well, I guess we need to do that in a later part, because when we switch the bloom to convolution, we actually get a proper shape for our bloom. If we would get like a highlight, it would not be just this blurry blob, but it would actually be something that looks more like this here, which adds really nice lights. I do that when I have like emissive lamps, for example. I crank them so it triggers the bloom, and you get like this nice little thingy. It does look a lot more professional and cinematic. But this is even without using this like this, it's just more pleasing to the eye. So if you can always use the convolution bloom, then our exposure is okay for now. So I know many people don't like post-processing effects all that much. I do like them when there is a purpose of simulating a camera. Like if you say okay, I need sterile and super crisp render like ever. Fine. Like you do you. That's of course like everybody has like their own perception of things. But I personally do like adding these things in a very subtle way. It's very funny because I do make like music in my free time, and I always describe it like in a similar way because sometimes you can do an effect on your music, and you push it really hard, and then it's like overbearing, and that's not how you want the effect to be. But then you basically reduce the effect, so you don't notice it anymore. Then you bring it back up until you notice it a tiny little bit, and from that point on, you reduce it a super small little and that is actually the sweet spot of where the effect works the best. I kind of feel in a very similar way about chromatic aberration and stuff like that. Because I really do like it, but the problem is I believe it has a very bad reputation because it's done the wrong way. And that is kind of like for example, a lot of people don't like motion blur in video games. And the actual problem in my I love motion blur, and I think it's very important for like cinematics. But what I think the problem is there's a difference between camera motion blur and per object motion blur. Per object motion blur is like when the camera stays static and something moves quickly, it gets rid of motion blur. I strongly believe that people wouldn't care about that at all, and they only care about it because there's also camera motion, which means that the camera stuff gets blurry from camera movement. So they say like a big sick when they look at it. I don't believe that people would have the same problem if there was only per object motion blur. They might not even notice that it was there. But what they do notice is the camera blur, which is well not that great. So anyways, like if we do this, this was obviously quite a strong tweak. So we can see it here in the back of the weapon. We can clearly see how it starts happening. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that our image, and also here we can also see it quite well. Actually, it does add to the believability because it is something that happens with cameras. But people also go like it makes the image so we need to find a way now to have this without it being overdone. And I do believe that if I would show you this picture like this, you wouldn't even notice that there was chromatic aberration. However, it adds to the flavor. Then dirt mask I usually don't really do. But I am a big fan of vignette. To be honest, I almost always use the same vignette, which is 0.6. I just like always go with 0.6. It works for me. It works for me. Now something very interesting. If we go down here, the color grading section. We have the filmic section, and this is the tone. This is the tone. This is what does the conversion from the HDR rendering in the background to the SDR view space we have here on our screen. I recommend highly for the uninitiated to not really touch these values. Like read up a bit on what mapping does, how it works. Fiddle around with it. Feel free to do so. But generally speaking, you don't really need to touch these unless you know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. I've seen it a lot from less experienced people. Is they just randomly go in and they tweak all these things and they go like, oh no, I just like this. Let's do something very important on our camera, and let's just go to transform and movement. So it stays like this. So like a lot of people just like randomly here because they are looking for like this one thing that makes somewhat better. I'm a very strong opponent of that. I don't think you should do that. I mean, you can try out things. Obviously, you need to learn. But like if you don't know why it looks bad, like touching these things here doesn't really help you to make it look any better. However, now we're just adding flavor. And flavor is a different thing. And one of the things that I do like the most is this thing down here in the filmic section. And this is basically clamping the highlights. And together with the chromatic aberration and some very subtle and tasteful grain, it adds this last like 10 to 5% to an image that makes it feel like this could have been taken with like a real camera. And what I do is I just crank it up to one in pretty much everything that I do. And now you can see so this is going to be very hard to see, and I hope that the compression will do this justice. So look at this reflection here. So now this reflection is pure white. Look at this point here when I turn this off. On, off. It's also very visible here. Like now it's off, on, off, on. So it takes the brightest values and clips them to full white. And this is something that happens with cameras. So to me, it's about like we do many super tiny little things, and when they come together, they create an image that is so much more believable. But I think that a lot of people have experience of like over tweaking all of these things, too much chromatic aberration, too much blur here, too much stuff there. But it's the sum of the parts that makes it a greater thing. And sadly, there's not really like a switch I can turn this on and off basically show the global changes right now without turning off like all the other things here too. But we could separate it to different posts. But like for now, it is really like subtleties coming together. Less is more. So we don't want to overdo this. One thing that I personally end up overdoing, and that is because I just really love it so much, is film grain. I'm a huge sucker for film grain. However, film grain can be a bit of a beast to tame. Luckily, very luckily, really made an incredible new film grain function here for Unreal 5. Beautiful to have all these tweaks. So what I usually do is I overtweak it in the viewport, and then I start taking screenshots, and then I look how it looks in the screenshot. Because the thing is, the film grain is moving. So when we actually render out screenshots, it looks different than what it looked when the edit like moving as like it was a game or something. So tweaking the film grain is a bit tricky because it also not only depends like there's a difference between the rendered out image because of the film freezing in that moment. But also, I'm not sure if Unreal or Epic has fixed that. But when we do a high resolution screenshot, there's actually a multiplier being applied. And it used to be the case that the multiplier was not applied to the grain. So basically, when you set the grain size a certain way, and then you have a multiplier for the high resolution screenshot, your grain looked actually like 2 times smaller. So you had to make it two times larger to end up in the screenshot the way you wanted it to be. I haven't debugged this yet with Unreal 5, so I'm not sure if it still works like that. However, what we want to do is we just want to crank this for now. And hopefully you can see it. And what we want is this really nice subtle stuff back there. So I'm gonna make it a bit more intense so we can see it better right now. So very intense. That's obviously not what we want. So one thing that I like is I do like my film grain a tiny little bit bigger. And then we're gonna soften it. And what I really also do like is when the film grain is like stronger in darker areas, less strong highlights and medium areas. So what we can do here is control the intensities for the midtones. So first of all, we can excuse me, remove it from the highlights. And now you can see I'm basically removing it from all the mid values, which is not what we want. We want it to be quite strong here, and these like darker values. And by the way, this jiggling stuff here, that's just ray traced reflection noise. Let's not confuse that with film. So this looks kind of weird because we do have like quite some strong noise here, and like none over here. What we need to do now is to very carefully bring this back in. And now that we have this, we should do a test shot. So the way I render out is always with the high resolution screenshot if it's not a cinematic. And I usually do two times multiplier. That is usually enough for me. So let's do that. And let's have a look here. And here we go. So now you can see that the grain is way too strong. However, what we can do is we can debug the grain better because we see it this way. So I do like this quite a lot. And honestly, this does look like a proper picture taken with the camera. So this does really believable. Like this does not necessarily look like an Unreal render. So this is actually one of the goals that I usually set myself stuff like I just don't want my stuff to look like an Unreal render. However, you may say that this is just too much, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in here and say one, and we're gonna capture another one, and we'll have a look here. So now we're actually starting to get into the realm of this is really pleasing. So honestly, personally, I think this looks fantastic. I think this looks really good. Now imagine we put logo stuff on here, some other things. This looks pretty much photoreal in a very pleasing way. And if you would want to get some different stuff with field and all these things. Again, it's just about repositioning the camera, tweaking things. So absolutely no magic here. And this was all super simple. This was not really super hard to do this. And I'm gonna take another light now. And what we can do super easily is of course, for example, bring in another light source here. And this time we're gonna make this super soft. So we're gonna keep this size for now. I'm gonna turn this around here. And as you can see, we are of course getting some of the reflections here. And we can light this in so many different ways. So I will do something like this. And it doesn't really matter where that in the world. It only matters what happens in the shot. And now you could, for example,
play around
with
some stuff like crazy colors. And what would be really interesting now would be to lift this, so we can sort of like remove the reflection a little bit. But if I make this larger, like you'll see how we're adding flavor to this. Like you'll see how it's still doing stuff. And this is like a super way to give mood to these kind of things here. Just by adding cool little things like this. And if we move it far enough away, we should be able to really get rid of the reflection, like this. But if I make it bright enough, we still start to get like highlights here. So if you see that again, like there are some really cool highlights now. And it's all about placing it properly and making the shot work. And this is really the simplest way of doing something really cool here. And it's magic at all. And also we're still using the funky little house thing. So this is just out of the box, and just rotation, and some good tweaking here. I think we should maybe turn on the shadows for just to make sure. So if we just gonna take our high resolution screenshot, just like take this. And we capture. There's some really cool stuff that we can do here. Definitely. I mean, we could probably just flip this over and have this come from the back because it would align more with this overall brightness. So this is also something to consider. Generally speaking, that when you have a certain direction of something that's kind of like working, like it makes sense to work with that and try to enhance it. So I'm just trying to do. It is a bit tricky because of the way that it's just like so bright. But something like this. And now I need to. I'm rotating it here, and I'm just looking at it because I didn't want to resize the viewport again. I wanted it to stay the same size for now. So we have the screenshots that we do at the same sort of like. I think this is quite interesting, for example. So if we look at this, so there's a lot of really cool stuff that we can make this just look super neat.
And then of course, like the next thing that can be done is to take the camera, unlock it, and with Alt drag, copy it. This one instantly locked again, so we don't like mess it up. I will clear out the rotation here, and then pilot this thing. There's such cool stuff that we can do with this. I mean, like even just like reframing, like just like that. It's kind of like so cool. And then we'll just use this guy again here. It's like there's just so much we can do once we have this setup in place, and it's like the sky is your limit. Move it around so much, change the lighting setup. We completely swap the cube. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, that is one of the easiest ways to just like work with the setup that you have, and just enhance it. And of course, we haven't even done any color grading because it's also not always necessary to do that. But of course, you can go into some of these values, and move it a bit like this. Gives you totally different flair instantly. So there's a lot of opportunity to do really cool things, and of course like it all depends on how you set this up good. So good. But this is like classic now that I offset the color grading a bit towards like the tealish Hollywood look that they all go for. But I can even when you have something like this, cool close-up shots of the thing that you're actually trying to show here, like. This is nice. This is a really nice close-up because we're catching these highlights here. Like I need to render this out. This is like for me. It's like exciting. It's so much fun to do these things because you always find something new and interesting to look at, and then you think like, damn, this is some really good stuff here. So like this is a really good shot. Like you can put this in your portfolio. And honestly, the best thing about this is these assets. They don't they're not bad. They're not even that spectacular. So imagine if you're like a weapon artist and you can put stuff out like this. This is just like this will get you higher. Definitely. So yeah. That's with this session. See you in the next lesson. Some different things to light, but still sort of like similar purpose and approach. I hope you all had fun. Thanks for watching.